Good morning, everyone. It's Thursday, and it's Christine, and I'm here today to talk about communication and documentation. So I actually had I've actually had 2 times where my documentation has saved me. One time was in the licensing world, and another one was business related. So let's talk about the one in the licensing world. So many years ago, I had some employees decide to act up. I'd only been open for almost a year. I went on vacation and I came back. And they had called licensing and called me in. And one of the things they called me in about had to be in the baby room, and we do health checks in the baby room. My documentation saved me, and it showed that the staff was not telling the truth. So I'm going to talk about how you document correctly. So if you have a composition book, that's normally what you'd use for documentation. And what you do is when you document, like when you do health checks and everything, you should be doing them twice a day, morning and afternoon. When you're doing your health checks, you write every child's name. Everyone has to be documented, even if they have nothing or if they have something. And you cannot skip a line. You use a pen, you use something that's not erasable. And if you make a mistake, you have to draw a line through it. And it has to still be readable. You cannot alter a documentation book. Once the book is altered, it's not liable. And in our world, it has to be liable. So what I had my staff do is they had to go through, they had a document, they could not skip lines, and they had to go to the next page the same way. And they dated it and everything, and they had an initial who did the documentation. That year when that happened and licensing came in and they told me what the complaint was, I was like, oh, wait a minute. And I went straight to the documentation book. I went and got it, and they went through it, and I did not get written up because they knew it wasn't true. So make sure that you document correctly. Documentation is everything, especially in your in-home daycare center and especially in your regular centers. So it's to protect you, but it's also to protect the staff. After that happened, I did put cameras in my facilities because I wanted to make sure that the staff knew that we were still watching. But I was so blessed that I had actually gone through a documentation training, and that helped me. But the other time it helped me because I knew how to document properly was I actually was volunteering for foster camp. I'm a Seroptimus member, and we do Camp Seroptimus. And 2 years ago, I was on my way out to volunteer, and a guy hit me. He totaled out my vehicle while I was on the clock, and I actually had to go to the hospital by ambulance. I ended up with 20 physical therapy appointments, and I still had 2 daycare centers. Let me tell you, you learn real quick what your processes are in your center that fail and what works. I had to go back and restructure some of the business side, and I also never dreamed I'd have a loss on my business from a guy within seconds hitting me and putting me in the hospital by ambulance. And I got out that night, but I had bursitis in my hip. I had all this stuff I had to deal with, and then I still was running 25 employees. I even had to come in 2 days later to do payroll because I had a new payroll system. I had not trained anyone yet. Like, there was so much stuff I realized my husband did not know what to do. If something had happened to me, my husband would have had to go to certain people and friends and my mentors to figure out what to do with the businesses. So one of the things I did do is I went and bought this book. I know it sounds kind of morbid, but this is very serious. You need to really know your documentation. It's called I'm Dead, Now What? And so I actually went and bought the book because I realized there's processes in place that my husband doesn't know about, and we had to put new ones in place in case something else happened to protect the businesses. At the time of my laws, I documented day one. I took pictures of everything. Just like in childcare, we take pictures. I took pictures of my whole accident. I went to the lawyer. This is before we knew we had losses on the business. I showed him my documentation, and his mouth dropped, and he's like, man, you're detailed. And I said, I own 2 businesses. I know all about liability. I know what we need to do to make sure. So I actually settled my case without a lawyer because at the time we didn't know I was gonna have losses on the business. I probably should have went back to him, but I did it on my own. I probably got more than most doing it on their own, only because I had been trained in documentation and I knew what to write. And I used to hold my P&C license for 6 years for property and casualty. I just didn't do the injury side. So I had a little knowledge in the background, but it was a lot of work. So I want you guys to be prepared. Make sure you know how to document correctly. Make sure you're doing it. You never know when you will need it. And like I said, with that car accident, I learned a lot. Next time, yes. Will I get a lawyer? Absolutely. Because I did have losses on the business because parents knew I were out. They weren't paying. They'd skip payments. And we had a new we did actually have a new system too for taking their payments. So that we wasn't helping anything. And I did get my money back. But I want to make sure you guys are protected. So please make sure that you know what to do and your family knows what to do if you get in a car accident. And in your in-home and your centers, please make sure you're documenting correctly. You never know when you're going to need it. And I'll tell you, we've had to pull it multiple times since then. And it's been my saving grace because I have cameras and I do document properly and the staff gets trained. So anyways, everyone have a great day.